This is quite literally the personification of being a Berserker on the first Berserker Khazan. This is a very strong build. This is a late game build that you are going to be using on the end game or that you are going to be using on the New Game Plus. However, my advice is that before you enter into the New Game Plus, you should craft the legendary set version of the build because it requires farming a very specific certain boss fight. And it's a late game boss fight, so if you enter into New Game Plus without the build, it's going to take quite a while before you actually start getting it. Have in mind that you do unlock the legendary version of everything once you are on the end game, so before you enter into the New Game Plus, this is what you should be striving to get if you want to use it on New Game Plus. And essentially what this is going to do is that it's going to turn you into a monster that is going to be dealing lots of swift attack damage, and that is also going to have some kind of hyper armor with some of the combination that we're going to have in a little while. I'll show you what. But with that hyper armor, you are also going to be healing back every damage that you deal. Have in mind that this is also plate armor, so there's a couple of things that we are going to have on the build. This isn't necessarily going to be a high level build that we are going to necessarily have high strength for us to be able to have at least B on our agility. We are not going to be able to manage to get A on agility because the investment into that is just too high. Right in here with the stats that I'm going to talk about in a little while are going to necessarily need high amounts of vitality and high amounts of strength. Now what you're going to have in your armor is for the set bonuses, the swift attack damage increase is going to be 10%, but also they are going to have a higher spirit accumulation. This is very important for us because the actual skill that the set unlocks has quite a whole lot of spirit requirement, and if we want to be using it with another spirit attack that we're going to be using, it's going to be somewhat like difficult to manage that back and forth. Also, whenever we deal damage to exhausted enemies and attacking enemies, we are going to be receiving our health back, which is why it's so important that this is a heavy armor and that we have lots of health so that we can retain that percentage back in our health. Not only that, but it's also going to increase the stamina damage by 20%, meaning that we can get the enemies be into the exhausted state that much more. As for the general things that we are going to have on our offensive stats for everything, it's just pure damage increase and attack damage increase, because that's what we are going to be doing most of the time, being very aggressive in here. So we have damage increase, we have I haven't been able to get stuff in here, but it's just damage increase, attack damage increase, stamina damage increase. Also, max stamina is not a bad idea because we want to be non-stop in here. So even though that the swift attack combos do not use that much stamina, it is very much in our interest to have a whole bunch of stamina so that we can continue the assault endlessly. This is also going to be very important for one of the skills that we are going to be using. Now for the stats, vitality on 60, that's where we have our hard cap, and then endurance on 60, that's where we have our hard cap, although that one of the most important things will be prior to that the first and foremost thing that we are going to need is Vitality 60 and Strength 28, because that is what is going to allow us to have at least a B on Agility. We do not want to be on C, we do not want to be fat rolling. So those are the two most important stats. And then you're going to level up evenly the endurance and the willpower, because remember that the weapon scales with willpower, but most of our damage is going to be coming from the percentages of the damage increase, the max attack, the swift attack damage increase. More often than not, we're not going to be using heavy attacks with this build. We are going to be doing swift attacks, because as you can see right in here, it gives us flat 20% damage increase with our swift attacks, but also the swift attacks are the ones that are going to have stamina damage increase. As for the skill trees, like always, we want to have as a base of everything. Like you can have the counter attack, the phantom forms. You see that I have all of that right there, but it's not really as important as it is going to be the resources skill points in here, so that you can be getting those spirit bags because of the buff that we are going to be using with our dual wields, and what it's going to basically be the whole front of everything with this build, which is going to be Gale Doom. Should not be confused with the Gale, because this is just a buff that we are going to be using to debuff. It's actually a debuff that is going to give us a buff. So basically what Gale does is that you injure the enemies. The more that you attack the injured enemies, you are going to receive a damage buff. Now what Gale Doom is, this is a Y, the hold Y input. This is going to be actually a spirit skill that we are going to necessarily have to equip into one of our inputs right in here. So what this is going to do is that it's going to enhance your swift attacks, and attacking the enemy after the enemy deals damage to you gives you a boost because you heal back everything. So the overall gist, you also want to select either the Howling Blade or the Whirlwind, although remember that the Whirlwind is going to be a Y input, so it depends on to you, but necessarily these are the stuff that you need as a base for everything that we are going to be using in here. Now, one of the combinations that I like to have is that I like to use my, I also forgot to mention before we start into that, Ruthless. Ruthless is very important for this build, because this gives you hyper armor and furthermore increases the damage that you deal as fast as possible with our swift attacks. So basically, I do not think that I need to slow down anything in here. You are going to have a rotation of first, you want to enter into wound the enemy with Gale. After you have wounded the enemy, you are going to be using the Gale Doom so that you can heal while you are using the Ruthless, because you are going to be receiving damage. But Ruthless, once you upgraded it to the Ruthless Strength, it's going to give you Unbreakable Poise. This is hyper armor that cannot be interrupted no matter how much they attack you. And since you're healing back because of the Gale Doom, this just becomes a monster. So basically, you wound the enemy. After you have wounded the enemy, then you're going to enter into the Gale, and then that's when you're going to start using the Ruthless, so that your meter for damage is going to increase, and you get a buff not only from the Gale Doom, so your basic regular attacks also receive damage from that extra 10 stacks that you have right in there, and they last for a whole bunch of time. So this is generally the setup that you want to have at all times, and the buff is going to last long enough for you to be able to cast it again. So once you have run out of the Gale Doom, then you wound the enemy once again, and then you cast the Gale Doom again, and then you use the Ruthless to increase the damage power of your basic attacks because of that extra buff as fast as possible, and that's when you start using the regular swift attacks as a basic means of attacking everything. So yeah, that's basically everything that you need to know about this build. There's somewhat of a technique that you need to have to maximize everything about this build. This should ensure that you have a spirit at all times, that you have that maximum buff at all times, that when you're getting the maximum amount of damage possible, it's always going to be active. But also, once you have managed to debuff and buff yourself, your swift attacks are going to be all the much more powerful because of all of these buffs that we are receiving. If you like the content, you like it, never super appreciate it. Nostalgia, there you go, you're a beautiful person. You are indeed a go, you're a beautiful, beautiful person. Subscribe to the channel, join the Discord. Have a beautiful day and goodbye.